Hi, everyone. It's Elizabeth here. So I hope you're having a really good week. I want to do this video in regards to there is love and then there is ego. I was having a conversation with a friend from Australia. I don't know, this might have been like a month or two ago. So, we just chat back and forth every now and then. And anyways, she mentioned something because we were talking about like just various things in spirituality, and she said, Elizabeth, there is love and there is ego. And so that has made me contemplate and think about a lot of things over the last couple months. Now, throughout my experience or career, throughout my journey as like a fitness manager and things like that, I've managed so many different types of instructors, and a lot of them have come from like the Pilates and the yoga background, which have their own kind of standards and spiritual texts. Like the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali is kind of like the Bible in yoga, for the 8 limbs of yoga and things like that. And then in Pilates you have the standard of the concepts that were created by Joseph Pilates, who created Pilates out of staying strong out of his bunk in the Holocaust. So, and then off of that, with Pilates, you have like various other different certification organizations and just corporations and stuff that give their own theory and concepts outside of the kind of the 5 pillars of like breath, precision, and core work and things like that. So, where I'm going with this is I, as a fitness manager, at times have just been at the point of like being that mediator or that middle of the ground person to kind of keep emotions and the egos from overflaring, because they definitely were at each other's throats about who is right and who is wrong. And throughout my experience of exploring various different spiritual communities, you definitely, in every community, whether it's Buddhism or Christianity or yoga, Hinduism, you get people who are very, very egotistical. It's almost like they're spiritual narcissists. And let's take yoga for example. I've never met really a very low ego power yoga instructor, especially the guys that are shirtless, wearing their mala beads with their little man bun and stuff. A lot of times they end up being like the most egotistical people. And the ego gets in the way of respecting other people's personal and spiritual growth, but it also, they sometimes end up developing this God complex, which is, I'm right, you're wrong. The way I was taught was the right and only way, and that's where a lot of confusion happens, or a lot of people lose their empathy because they're just so fixed, like visors closed, that their way was the one and only way, or that they know the truth and other people don't know the truth. So at the end of the day, all forms of spirituality and religion have their good and their bad sides. Maybe good and bad is subjective, so we could just say their light and their dark side. And I think many people, sometimes the more you know, the more egotistical you get. That's the same as what you see in higher education. Once you get a master's degree and a PhD, the ego generally tends to inflate the more educated you get. And we could definitely see this in the spiritual communities, and especially in Christianity, we have a lot of people who are driven down the wrong path. Like you have all these prosperity preachers, like Joel Osteen and what's that other guy? He's kind of with Justin Bieber. He helped guide him. I don't know. They do like home church or church home or something like that. And anyways, they're not really preaching a lot of spiritual theory, but they're kind of more flashing the abundance and prosperity side by wearing like really nice clothing and getting people to be obsessed with motorcycles or whatever shit that they bring on stage, like really nice business suits. Their churches make millions and millions of dollars a year. And so a lot of times their teachings, people can get caught up into a lot of this because they want this, or they want an easier life. They don't want to be working this 9-to-5 struggling job at like $13 an hour. They want, to make the millions and things like that. And that is a lot of inflating the ego, and as well as leading people off the actual spiritual track and leading them into worrying about prosperity and abundance. And so a lot of times I think when you're so focused on the earth plane, it's it's darkness masked in light. So there's 2 Corinthians 11:14, which talks about Satan himself masks himself in light. And if you do look at something like that, from kind of that satanic point of view, they are definitely all about worldly pleasures and feeding the flesh and things like that. So a lot of times the ego can get in the way of understanding or really sticking to that moral compass or this actual spiritual text and theory. And it can not only make you have your own kind of God complex where you think you are right or wrong, but it also can start to go down the rabbit hole of self-destruction through just worshiping the material world. And you learn in yoga that the material world is Maya, it's the illusion, and that we are here to develop and evolve our souls and not here to gain like a 6-bedroom house with a 7-car garage and things like that. So there is love, and then there is ego. And we can all argue between what is right and what is wrong. Probably the Bible is the word of God and the truth, but, other people can argue that other forms of spirituality offer part truth and not all of the truth, which maybe I don't disagree with them, but I'm just saying whatever you come from, there is love, and then there is the ego. Acting and doing things out of love or because you genuinely want to help somebody and things like that, that comes from developing yourself through that form of Christ consciousness. That is what a lot of spiritual people have been talking about. I'm not going to give an opinion whether it's right or wrong, but we can at least take this hypothesis and still apply it to our own life. In the Bible, it says we were made in the likeness and the image of God. So that means God looks like us, like a human. Now, the spiritual community has talked about Christ consciousness, which is that you can become like Christ by evolving yourself and living through this path of love and loving people for who they are and accepting people for who they are. Obviously, in the logical realm, you have to draw the line in the sand and have some borders and boundaries, of course. But these things are definitely possible. To be like Christ, not to be so egotistical that you become Jesus on earth. That's where the ego comes into play. And a lot of people have gone down the rabbit hole of really stupid teachers because they have this concept of, that they are Jesus on this planet. No, you're not. You are not God. You are not Jesus, but you can become like them by evolving yourself and walking away from a lot of things that are very, either immoral or dark and things like that, and choosing healthier communities and partnerships to be in and stuff like that. So, one example I will share is last Christmas, I went to Chicago first, and then I went there for like a day and a half and took the Amtrak train to Chicago. And last year I was having a really hard time in Seattle because things were still kind of really heightened emotionally, probably from things like the election and, the West Coast, this little bubble in the city of Seattle cannot really empathize with people who have other perspectives at times. So where I was walking to find my hotel, which was ironically on Ohio Street, and so I was walking behind this woman. She was a blonde woman. She was like pristine. She was wearing heels. She was a classy lady. Like she was wearing like a coat that had like lines of fur in it. And so she was definitely going somewhere, I don't know where, but she was probably rich, let's put it that way. And she looked good. She was a very pretty woman, kind of probably in her 40s. Anyways, so I was walking behind her, and we both passed a homeless black woman that was sitting inside of just basically like a doorway. She had a sleeping bag and a sign. And I was a little bit further behind the blonde woman, and she stopped for a second. So she walked past the black woman, and she stopped. And then she had like a clutch purse, and she opened the clutch purse, turned around, and handed the woman a $20 bill. And so I saw that $20 bill being handed to her as I walked by. And for me, I was like, that was such a generous act of love that came from such a selfless point of view. And I, kind of by the Kris Kringle Market, the winter German market in downtown Chicago, there's a church across the street in an old building that I can't think of. And this one woman, she just said, let's preach and practice the theory of love. And she goes, you have your Amtrak at 9 o'clock at night. Just tell them, I think her name was Marie. They're like, just tell the front desk, Marie, let you in. You can stay here as long as you need so you're not out in the cold. And if we want people to start loving other people, we have to start acting through acts of love. And she, I ended up not going back to that church because I was busy with other things in the city. But she basically opened up that church and that lobby way for me to have a place to stay before my 9:30 p.m. Amtrak ticket. And so it was such a breath of fresh air. Some of it is in part because of the Midwest personality. I think it's just the Midwest is very friendly and hospitable and, kind of like look out for your neighbor. It's not as much as tight-niched as what it used to be, but that's the entire country and the entire world is just losing that, nucleus or that community sense. But I just, that those two things kind of actually drew me back toward Christianity because I was like, that was the essence, or that was the actual practicing what you preach of love, which is, like, shit, this woman was so fancy and so classy, her life would be fine. She could afford $20, and you know what? She did. And that was, I don't know, and that was also like a nice thing too to kind of bridge this gap between, like, there's so much racial segregation and stuff these days to where it's like, you know what, there are people out there who are helping other people who are not of their same skin color and stuff like that. And obviously being a woman, we're programmed a little bit differently than men, so we actually probably care a little bit more. And that church in Chicago, that woman was just so bloody nice, and she was just, I don't know, it just made me want to reflect that more, and it's like, okay, that's like the type of Christianity that I'm attracted to, is that sense. It's not this like damnation, you're going to hell and all this shit because you don't believe in this and your tithing isn't 10%, like the religious part. So what I'm getting at is, like, there's the faith-based and the dogmatic religion part of it, but it's practicing what you preach, and it's extending out the love, and it's shedding your own ego to know that you are not the right one. In psychopathy and narcissism, the God complex is so fucking dangerous because that's why people end up murdering other people. It's because they think they are their own God. They're wrapped up in their ego. They're wrapped up in all of their hurt and their anguish and their pain. And they, they think evil doesn't exist and that they can control everyone's life. And that is like, holy crap, like, when the ego gets flared, let's think about this. What are most of the world's problems and issues today? A lot of it roots down to the ego. If you type in the word inner world, outer world documentary in YouTube, you can watch a 4-part video that's 30 minutes long. I've watched this video about 22 times. I discovered it probably back in, like, I don't know, 2013 or 14 or something like that. And whenever I'm going through shitty time periods in my life, I watch this video because it reminds me that there is more out there than me. In addition to it helps you kind of understand the world and the vibration that you want to be in. I want to be in a world that looks like my fucking walls behind me, which is like flowers and pretty things. You know what I mean? That vibration is a lot different than the other side of the rabbit hole, which is like death and destruction and lust and anger and all this stuff. So, yeah, I don't know. Just think about wars and all these leaders. You have this president in the Philippines a year or two ago said that he's basically like the Adolf Hitler of today. And he gave people the authority to kind of kill drug dealers and stuff like that. Like, he took a really hard, firm stance on the drug situation, but to an extreme degree of like actually killing people, rather than doing some sort of like putting them in jail and rehabilitating them or whatever like that. I don't know. Anyways, I'm going off the rabbit hole of this, but I'm just talking about how the ego can really blind us and really get us into really destructive, whether that's societal or individual self-destruction, through the flaring of that ego. And spiritual narcissists are kind of scary as well, because they only believe that they're the right way, or that they are the absolute 100% creator of everything. And that's not true. You cannot, I mean, if you believe in God and heaven, like, you cannot think that you just create everything on this planet. Like, you do co-creation, but I think God has the ultimate authority to kind of pull and pluck things, or to drop things in your life to get you on the right path, or to test you. It's like, all right, let's see if this person is real. Like, are they really ready for this? So yeah. Anyways, these are some thoughts that I have. If you have any thoughts, please feel free to share them. I like learning from people. I'm very thankful for some of the people who have consistently commented, because it makes me reflect and think a lot, and it helps me grow as well. So we should all be on this path of helping each other grow. Let's grow more rather than judge more. Let's bless more instead of judge. Bless more, judge less is what I'm saying. So if you like my voice or what I kind of talk about, please subscribe to help me build this channel. Thank you for liking, sharing, and subscribing, and hope you have a great day. And you can also see other related blog link topics and stuff posted down below. All right, thank you so much. Have a good one. Bye.